Well, good morning, Alec. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's start with just kind of our overarching question. Why is music important in the public schools?
So this is a portfolio I provided for you.
Uh-huh.
So with that, if you look at page 7 of the portfolio, I listed a few reasons of why I believe, some study-based reasons why music education is important in schools. I believe the 3 that I listed there are creativity, self-esteem, and language skills. But aside from that, music has been proven to actually activate both the right and left sides of the brain in students. So with that, I believe that music is the perfect opportunity to implement all the different subjects within school, such as math, language arts, science, PE, through dance. I believe that music is a perfect opportunity to take all of those different subjects, learn about them within the music classroom, and then actually use them to influence what the students are creating through music to make an educational-based opportunity for them to actually create something physical to bring into the world and really think through all those different topics as well.
Excellent.
So that's why I believe music should be valued in schools, and I feel like as many students as possible should be involved as well.
Ah, okay. So with that in mind, how would you describe your qualifications for teaching music?
So my qualifications for teaching music, I believe that I always put the students first. First and foremost, I believe that student relationships are the most important to get them involved in the program, but also to keep them involved in the program as well. I want them to have a sense of self-investment, and I believe fostering those relationships are one of the biggest ways to, or one of my biggest qualifications for teaching. Aside from that, I got my bachelor's degree for music education from Kansas State University.
That's a great school.
It is great. The nice thing about K-State is they gave me a lot of opportunities to actually get in front of students and to test out some of my different teaching strategies that I learned through classes, but also that I've just kind of fostered in myself. But aside from just my coursework, the nice thing about K-State is I also had a lot of opportunities to get involved in community programs as well as programs at the university. So for example, an opportunity that I had with a community program was with the children's choir, Flint Hills Children's Choir. The nice thing about that is it really fostered my sense of administrative duties as a teacher. So for example, with the choir, I was responsible for sending emails to parents. I was responsible for making parent handouts, designing PowerPoints. So some of those administrative tasks, and like taking attendance as well. But then I also had the opportunity to kind of try out some of my teaching strategies by getting in front of the ensemble. And then another opportunity that I had at K-State was to work side by side with the K-State choirs as their concert manager. And the nice thing about that is I was able to, my responsibilities with that role was to design programs, design posters, line up how everything was going to be set up for the concerts, actually go out to the concert sites and map out how everything was going to look with that. So with those 2 opportunities as well, it really fostered my organizational skills and thinking ahead and just really, thinking, organizing people, but then just thinking step-by-step process of how to attack different things. So I believe with those 2 things, that really qualifies me, and it's going to make me a great music educator.
Thank you. You mentioned the importance of building relationships within your program to keep them engaged. What does that look like? How do you, as a choral director, facilitate that process?
So I believe that I want the students to know first and foremost that I'm there for them. So if that means that we take a day, not necessarily throw out the coursework, but if I see that a student is in distress, I want the student to know that I will do anything for them. And if it's outside of my qualification, I will get them the resources they need. So first and foremost, I want the students to know that they're valued and that they're important. And as an opportunity to reach all students of the school, not just necessarily students that want to be involved in an ensemble, I really hope to that in order to reach different demographics of students, that I would have the opportunity to implement some alternative music classes besides just ensemble work. So whether that's like a music theory class or a guitar class or a small, kind of band class that's not a traditional band, but like a rock band or something like that, or a music software class, I would hope that through the implementation of some courses like that I would be able to reach a wider variety of wider variety of students and foster those relationships and just really show them that they're valued no matter what, and hopefully show them some different sides of music as well besides just the performance aspect.
Very good, thank you. So kind of the opposite of maybe my original question about qualifications is where are areas of weakness or where you need to improve, and how do you plan to address these issues?
So I feel as of now, as a fresh graduate from K-State, I believe that my biggest weakness is just knowing exactly what students, age-wise, what they should be able to do and what they're not so good at that point in time. So like I said, I have had opportunities to get out into the classes and get in front of students and kind of see what they do. But I feel like until I'm with them every single day, I'm not going to know exactly what we'll be able to do. So one way I combat that is within each of my lesson plans, I implement a reflection portion where I'll fill that out after each time I teach that lesson. And that's going to give me an opportunity to think through the lesson, what went well, what didn't go so well. And then it's going to be able to give me an opportunity to synthesize that information. And then, so that'll give me like a written log of what students are able to do throughout the year. But then it also gives me the opportunity to look back in the future. And it'll give me an opportunity to look back in the future if I ever do pull out that lesson again. And, see exactly what went well, what didn't go so well. And then I'll be able to change it accordingly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So with a minimal budget, how would you fund your music program in this district?
Yeah, so I'm definitely open to some different fundraising opportunities. My biggest hope would be that I would have the opportunity to work hand in hand with parent organizations and booster clubs in order to get them involved as well as students for whatever fundraising activities that we do, whether that being, selling chocolate bars. I was involved with a really fun program that we did with my youth group growing up where we would sell sub sandwiches on Super Bowl Sunday. So we would take orders leading up to that Sunday, and on that day we would make the sandwiches and actually distribute them that day. And, we'd sell 300 to 400 sandwiches in my very small community and make upwards to $4,000 to $5,000. So that's just a few examples of or fundraising opportunities. But with that as well, I believe that if in the community we as an organization, as a music organization, if we're present and we are a positive influence in the community, I believe the community will be willing to, or at least I would hope that the community would be willing to give back to us. So I'd really hope to get the students as involved in the community as possible, and not necessarily tying it to the hopes of getting a monetary value back, but just being a positive influence to the community so that they would be willing to, help us out as well, continue the organization.
So, how would you describe your teaching style?
So as I said, my biggest priority is just having a positive relationship with the students. With my teaching style, I really try to implement the relationships that I have with students through that. So giving really individualized instruction and making it very personal with the students. I believe that I should be not necessarily the source of information for the students, but I should be a guide to help students find that information for themselves. So I really try to set up as many classroom activities, real-life activities, and experiences for students within my classroom for them to kind of come to their own understanding of topics and just be used as a sort of guide. So if you would come into my classroom, you would see a lot of group work, partner work. You might see students up in front of the ensemble actually conducting. And you'll really just see me actually within, you'll see me kind of on the same level as the students, if that makes sense. I try to just make them feel like, not necessarily that I'm one of them, but I'm on their same level and I'm working with them in order to help them achieve.
So how do you manage that approach and maintain an appropriate teacher-student relationship?
So that's a good question. So with that, I always keep it professional. So I'm not with fostering positive relationships. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm their friend. With that, I mean that they will always know that I'm there as a resource and as a guide, but not a friend. So I always keep it as professional as possible. I always, with keeping it professional, I never friend them on like Facebook or any social media like that. With our program, we do use some sources of social media just for like marketing purposes or to send out information, but it's never like a personal profile of mine on that. It's always a professional, like a class profile that I distribute that kind of information. So I always keep it professional as possible. But like I said, just they'll know that I'm a guide and that I'm trying to work with them.
Good. How would you handle disciplinary action in your classroom?
So if you look at page 6 of the portfolio I provided you, I listed kind of a brief summary of my disciplinary policy. With discipline, though, I always try to keep it as minimal as possible. And what I mean by that is I believe that there's some steps before disciplinary action is taken that can prevent disciplinary action from being needed. So the biggest way that I do that to control the class is I believe I always try to look at what actions I can personally take to control the class. So whether that be, I'm always very conscious of the tone of voice I use. So if I want the students to get quieter, I'll use a quieter tone of voice. And then I feel like a lot of people don't look necessarily at what like the power of proximity with students. So like I said, with moving around through students, if I see a student is acting up or having some issues, even just stepping closer, and stepping closer to them can fix the problem without me actually having to verbally address the issue. So if those few steps don't work, then for my disciplinary action, I go based off of a 3-strike policy. So the first strike is a verbal warning, where I tell the student that their actions their behaviors aren't necessarily appropriate for the classroom, and I give them an opportunity to reflect on what they're doing and fix that behavior. And if that behavior still proceeds, that'll be a second strike, and then that's where I actually move the student to a different location in the class, whether that be to the back of the classroom, away from other students, or closer to me. That just gives them another opportunity to self-reflect on their behaviors and realize that it's not necessarily appropriate for what we're doing in the class. And then if that behavior still persists, then on the third strike, I'll actually ask them to step out of the class for a moment or two to, again, reflect on their actions. And then whenever they feel they're ready, they can come back into the class. So that's kind of my policy for discipline. I never want the student to feel like they're a bad student. I always just want to give them an opportunity to look at what they're doing and fix that. Obviously, if they're putting other students at danger, I'll remove them from the class and take whatever action is needed that way to keep all the rest of my students safe. But I really try to keep all the students within my class as much as possible. And then something that helps with that as well is those personal relationships that I said I try to foster with students as well. I really try to keep them on a one-on-one basis with that.